Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Rice, you want to get us started?
Yes. Just a little bit of housekeeping from last time in terms of the parties. There were 3 people who had requested at some point party status, and we had agreed to map out their addresses. All 3 of the individuals are outside 1,000 feet or more away from the property. So let me just read these into the record so it's clear, and if you're here, what that means is you've denied party status because of your location. So Robbie Weirman at 101 Lantoga, 1,250 feet. Louisa Henshaw, 219 Sugartown, 1,900 feet away from the site. And Steve Rocky, R-O-C-C-I, who I was told last month that he's moved out of the township, and I don't think he's ever been here. Maybe he came the first night, but so those 3 are out in terms of party status. Tonight, Mr. Lambert is back on the witness stand on his direct examination. And once he's done, Mr. Morlier will cross-examine him, and then once Mr. Morlier is done, I'm going to go through the parties that have questions. Remember the rules. Questions about the witness's testimony. So he's talking about civil engineering, stormwater management, the site conditions. Don't ask him about traffic, because there's a traffic engineer here who will testify, or other things other than the substance of his testimony. That way it'll be, there won't be any objections, and we'll keep moving things along. So any questions from any of the parties at this point? Okay, Mr. Lambert, you are still under oath. Mr. Brosman, proceed on.
Thank you. At the end of the last hearing on January 31, 2024, Mr. Lambert, we had reviewed Code Section 280-100 of the provisions regarding density modification development application requirements. Let's now turn to Code Sections 280-135C and F in the general provisions regarding conditional use applications. Can you summarize these provisions and describe how the plans comply with those?
Yes. So 280-135C states a generalized, and I'll emphasize generalized, site plan shall be submitted as part of any conditional use application. It is not intended that such a plan be engineered or contain a fixed architectural layout such as would be required under Chapter 255, Subdivision of Land. The plan shall, however, demonstrate compliance with all applicable standards for approval of the conditional use, including those cited in subsection F below. So we've kind of far exceeded a generalized site plan. We've provided a full plan set with existing conditions, proposed layout, stormwater management controls, erosion and sediment controls, details, profiles, landscape and lighting plans. So we have really a full plan set. So we far exceeded the generalized site plan requirement. Under subparagraph F, it states, in addition to demonstrating compliance with all standards applicable to the conditional use being requested, the generalized site plan shall show how the applicant's intentions with regard to the following. So subparagraph 1 says site access, interior circulation, and parking. So I would refer to Exhibit A12, and it was sheet 4. It shows the site access. We have 2 driveways accessing Stratford Avenue, which can be seen on the plan. Interior circulation, again, we have the driveway, which is roughly a horseshoe shape on the property. It shows all the internal circulation and the parking. We've shown the parking we discussed previously with the parking spaces within the garage of each unit, and then we have 10 overflow parking spaces, kind of 5 in the lower right of the horseshoe and 5 in the lower left of the horseshoe.
In addition to these general zoning requirements regarding site access, and interior circulation, is there a specific provision in the Radnor subdivision and land development ordinance for attached dwelling development like that proposed here?
Yes, there is.
And would you review those provisions as they address interior circulation and driveways and address how the plans comply?
Yeah, so under section 25540, which the title of the section is Multifamily and Attached Dwelling Residential Development, which this application entails. Subparagraph C is access and circulation. C1 is access to the dwellings and circulation between buildings and other important project facilities for vehicular and pedestrian traffic shall be comfortable and convenient for the occupants. Again, we've laid out the driveway on site to provide convenient and comfortable access for all the vehicular access. You have 2 points of ingress and egress on Stratford Road or Stratford Avenue. And then we also provide a sidewalk along the internal driveway all the way around the perimeter of the property. Subparagraph 2 says access and circulation for firefighting and other emergency equipment, moving vans, fuel trucks, garbage collection, deliveries, and snow removal shall be planned for efficient and convenience. So in addition to the plan shown, Exhibit A12, Sheet 4, in A12, Sheet 12 is a turning template plan. Is a turning template plan. So we used the largest fire truck from Radnor Township to show that the fire truck can circulate throughout the proposed development. We have also shown a truck being able to circulate through the development that would provide the access. And then subparagraph 3 says walking distance from the main entrance of a building or single-family dwelling unit to a parking area shall be less than 100 feet. As testified to before, each one of the dwelling units has 2 parking spaces in the garage, and so we have the parking within the units themselves. Under 250-40E is driveways. Subparagraph 1 states, driveway shall be provided on the site where necessary for convenient access to dwelling units, garage compounds, parking areas, service entrance of buildings, collection of refuse, and all other necessary services. Driveways shall enter public streets at safe locations. So I'm going to go back to A12, Sheet 4, just because. So you can see on A12 Sheet 4, the driveways provide convenient access to the dwelling units. So the configuration of the driveway provides all kind of direct access to each of the units. It provides access to the parking, not only the parking within each unit, but the overflow parking on the site, as I said, in the kind of bottom right and left of the horseshoe driveway. And we have collection of refuse, so the trash trucks will use the internal driveway system. It's a private collection, would be collecting trash on the internal driveway. And it enters driveways. Driveways shall enter public streets at safe locations. And so on sheet A12, Sheet 5, we show the clear sight triangles for the driveway where it enters Stratford Avenue.
They are also on sheet 4, are they not?
Yes, they're also on sheet 4.
Are you finished with that section?
So, I'm sorry, subparagraph 2 says driveway shall be planned for convenient circulation, suitable for the traffic needs and safety. Again, I think some of the previous comments had similar requirements. Again, showing the convenient access and circulation with a horseshoe shape accessing or providing access to all of the units throughout the development. And number 3, all driveways shall be paved and constructed in accordance with township standards.
And do you believe this driveway meets applicable standards for driveways?
Yes.
Let's go back to 280-132F, the generalized site plan provisions. You've done F1. Let's go to F2. Would you summarize 280-132F2 and describe how the plans comply with those requirements?
I believe you're referring to 280-135 F2.
Yes, thank you.
F2 is location, approximate dimension, and arrangement of all areas devoted to ground cover, trees, screening and buffering, other planting, open space, recreation, and similar purposes as applicable. So I'll use, again, Exhibit A12, Sheet 4. The open space is identified in the center in the dark green color and is labeled open space. It shows in lighter green area other landscape areas. Another witness will address all the landscaping proposed on the site and screening and buffering. Subparagraph 3 says adequate handling of stormwater in the form of a preliminary written analysis and conclusions as to anticipated methods prepared by a registered professional engineer. The plan set includes full stormwater designs. There's also a separate stormwater report. I believe we submitted A13 at the last hearing. We have a full stormwater report, but the plans show full stormwater controls with the appropriate calculations. We've done permeability testing to demonstrate that we will be able to meet the infiltration requirements. In general, using Exhibit A12, Sheet 4, on the right-hand side, there is a underground stormwater basin in front of Units 1 and 2 and kind of down to the bottom of Unit 38. There's a underground stormwater basin underneath and larger than the 5 overflow parking spaces in the bottom right of the horseshoe. There is another underground stormwater basin to the left of Unit 25. And then there is a underground stormwater basin behind Units 13 to 15. And there is an additional stormwater basin, I'll scroll down, on the Forest Lane parcel. There's an additional stormwater basin.
And you mentioned that the plans include details you mentioned regarding stormwater. You've identified locations on sheet 4 of A12. Do sheets 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 also contain information about the proposed stormwater systems?
Yes, they do.
Before I have you go into the proposed stormwater management system in greater detail, let's focus for a moment on existing stormwater conditions. Are you familiar with existing stormwater management conditions on the property?
I am.
And can you describe what the situation is on the property as it currently exists regarding stormwater management?
So using Exhibit A12, Sheet 2 is the existing conditions plan. You can see the improvements on the plan, including structures, extensive driveway network, accessory buildings, swimming pools, walkways. All the impervious amounts to almost just under 2 acres of impervious, and there are no stormwater radar volume controls on this site.
And can you describe, in general, what is proposed for the stormwater management facilities for this project?
Yes, there will be, going back to A12, actually your sheet 5. We have a series of underground stormwater basins that will control both the rate and volume of runoff in accordance with the Township and NPDES regulation. We have a collection system collecting with inlets and piping, directing water to the underground systems, and then those underground systems will control the rate and volume of stormwater runoff.
And in your professional opinion, will these provisions meet the applicable township stormwater management ordinance provisions?
Yes, we prepared stormwater calculations, Exhibit A13, and on sheet 2, which is labeled as 2, we have provided, apologize, a new computer here doesn't want to work, a summary. And so what I focused on is point of interest A. There is also further in the report point of interest B. Point of interest A, for the record, was kind of in the lower left corner of the plan leading to forest. That is what we've really had most interest in from the community is the drainage area in that direction. We have provided stormwater calculations in accordance with the township requirements, and those requirements require you to make assumptions that aren't existing conditions necessarily for our existing coverage. So for instance, in the pre-development condition, which you can see on the left-hand side, we've run a model to show how much water we're coming off for the 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm. The township requires the condition of the soil to be, or condition of the site to be considered meadow. So really what it's doing is it's creating a fictitious condition which reduces the amount of runoff leaving the site that they allow you to match when you do your modeling for the post-development condition. In addition, they require that the 2-year post-development rate be reduced to the 1-year pre-development rate. So what this table shows is on the left-hand side, you have the pre-development for the allowable release rate, which is shown in the 4th column from the left. And then we have post-development. Again, there's many pages behind this report. I've only included the summary table supporting this documentation. The post-development rates after the water runs through the systems, and looking at the same point of interest, how much water is being discharged to that point. And then the next column is showing the compliance, and then it shows a reduction. And so I'll focus on the percent reduction. So in the percent reduction for a 1-year storm, we would have a 68% reduction in the rate of runoff. The second row for the 2-year storm only shows an 11% reduction. And it looks a little bit odd with the other percentages shown. The reason that was a little bit odd is because the 2-year storm must be controlled under the 1-year storm. And so you have this over-control as part of the ordinance, and this is showing that we're exceeding the ordinance with the rate control. And then going all the way down to the 100-year storm, you can see we have a 39% reduction in the amount of runoff based on that fictitious pre-development condition.
And when you said that you have to treat the site as meadow, in layman's terms, does that mean when you looked at the existing condition plan, you said there was almost 2 acres of existing impervious coverage?
That is correct.
So the township ordinance, very conservatively speaking, is basically saying ignore all of that. Assume instead that it was a natural meadow and compare your new project not with the existing large amount of impervious, but as if it were a meadow. Is that what it's doing?
That is correct. We don't count the existing impervious coverage. The typical intent of the ordinances is that you want to get back to a more natural condition and cure some of the past ills, right? So we wouldn't count that impervious that's there for the rate control, and we'd be able to just count it as a meadow.
And with the stormwater management ordinance and stormwater management plans, are those typically a subject of land development review and approval?
Both land development and then further along in permitting. We would need, obviously, the land development approvals, and then we would need township grading permits, and the NPDS permit also reviews the stormwater controls.
And during the land development process, the township has its own engineering consultants that review the reports and review the plans and make sure the plans comply with the ordinances as well.
Yes, they do extensive reviews.
And that happens during land development as well as the township permitting process.
Yes, it does.
And you mentioned the NPDS permit. You may have said this in earlier testimony, but since we're on the topic, what is an NPDS permit and what is the review process for that?
It's National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, and it is a permit that's issued through the County Conservation District. It reviews both your erosion and sediment controls for during construction and your post-development stormwater controls.
And that's required whenever there's more than an acre of disturbance on a project?
That is correct, yes.
And so in addition to all of the township reviews, the NPDS, is that reviewed by professionals, and who would that be?
The NPDS is reviewed by the County Conservation District.
And as part of the township process and the NPDS process, will a covenant be required to be recorded to document the stormwater management requirements, and that the systems that are required and installed would be properly maintained and functioning?
Yes, the plans are recorded showing the systems, and there's an operation and maintenance agreement that's recorded.
And that has to be recorded as part of the NPDS requirements?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, I know there is a lot of concern about stormwater management conditions, existing conditions beyond the property. Can you describe your understanding of some of the nearby existing stormwater conditions?
Yes. Early on in our engagement with the community, there was a lot of concern about stormwater runoff. The site generally drains, so water runoff, from about a third over from Eagle Road to the bottom left corner, which was Forest. Just scroll down a little bit to Forest Lane. And so many community members on Forest Lane have experienced substantive runoff. So our client, the applicant, asked us to take a look at a little bit larger view of the stormwater than is typically looked at. So I've put on the screen here Exhibit A15. And this is a...
We're going to hand those up. We hadn't submitted this previously.
So Exhibit A15 consists of 3 sheets. The first 2 sheets are kind of a compilation plan. It includes some of our survey information overlaid on an aerial photograph with LiDAR topography, so publicly available topography information to determine approximate drainage areas. And it has various colors on it, which I will describe, which shows different drainage areas. And the third sheet is a summary sheet using actual conditions versus the township required conditions to provide real numbers, because the question that we always receive is, well, what is the change going to be when you're done? So we tried to address that kind of separately from the township requirements to not confuse things. So the plan that's up on the screen right now is Exhibit A15. I believe we've labeled it A. And this plan shows the existing conditions. We have a purple area, and I'm sorry, the orientation of the plan is the same that we've been looking at for all the other plans. Eagle Road is on the right-hand side, going top to bottom. Stratford is going across the top of the page, left to right. Forest Lane is down in the lower left of this plan. So the area that's labeled A6, which is the pink area, is kind of the area along Stratford. Some of the areas, it was a little bit difficult to tell the exact pattern of the water, but it appears that the water from the kind of top along Stratford from the site drains out to Stratford Avenue, runs along Stratford, and then makes its way out to the bottom left. The blue area, which is Area 4, is the portion of the site, the development site, which drains toward Forest Lane. So that's where I was saying it was kind of a third from from Eagle Road, drains down to the lower right. Area A5, that is the area of Grant Lane. So really the fronts of Grant Lane drain to an inlet at the end of Grant Lane. And then the area A3 is the green area, which drains kind of to the lower area of Forest. So we started doing analysis to see how much area drains to Forest, what impact the proposed development site has on that area, and what we could do to help mitigate some of the issues. On the bottom of A15A is really just an overall summary showing what we calculated as impervious overall area, which is about 555,000 square feet, lawn area and impervious area. So we use some of those in our calculations. So Exhibit A15B, again, and this plan is in the same orientation and uses the same base plan surrounding the site, but the site, the area of development actually shows what the proposed plan will look like on the site. And we've changed some of the drainage areas. The main drainage area that we changed was the pink area. There was a concern, and I believe at the last hearing, or the hearing before, a neighbor at the corner of Grant Lane and Stratford commented that they receive a lot of water coming down Stratford. The previous Exhibit A15A showed that there is a fair amount of drainage area that gets out to Stratford and runs down Stratford, and I believe gets along that property. What we've done is actually added, to address some of the concern, we've actually added an inlet out on Stratford along the site to be able to collect the water, control it, and release it in a controlled manner. So the blue area is a little bit larger than what was shown on A15A. So A15B shows a little bit larger area in the proposed condition. Yet I want to point out that the rate and volume that's actually discharging out in the lower left is based on the A15A drainage area. So we've actually over-controlling the water picking up more water and over-controlling it. So that's what we have shown on this exhibit. And then, again, you can see the green area down in the lower left. The blue area was about 40% of the drainage area getting to the lower green area. And then A15C is a summary table, and I will reiterate for the record that this is not this is not a table following the township requirements. That was Exhibit A13 is the township stormwater report. But what we've actually done is we've called this actual conditions. So not assuming a pre-development meadow condition, looking at existing conditions, draining to point of interest A, what are the rates of runoff getting there, and pre-development versus post-development, and what are the changes that a resident may see. And so if you look at, for a one-year storm, we now have a 95% reduction in the amount of runoff coming from the site down to the point of interest A. For a two-year storm, remember the anomaly we talked about for A13, where it was only showing an 11% reduction. In actual runoff terms, it would actually be a 92% reduction. And then going down to the 100-year storm, I believe the 100-year in the A13, off the top of my head, was 39%, and you can see that we actually have a 55% reduction in the actual amount of runoff using existing conditions.
Does that cover the stormwater management topic that you wanted to cover?
Yes.
Let's go to 280, 135, F4. We're still under those generalized site plan requirements, the general part of the conditional use. Please summarize those requirements and address how the plans comply.
So it states location, plan uses, approximate overall dimensions, gross floor area, coverage and height of each building or structure. And so I will go back to A12, sheet 4. So using the notes in the upper right-hand corner, it identifies that we're proposing a townhouse use. So that was the planned uses portion of that. We have the dimensions are shown on various units. Unit 1, for instance, has both width and depth. Various other units show dimensions both of the units and dimensions in between units. The gross floor area, we have the building area in the zoning table on the left-hand side, showing the amount of building area. The coverage, again, we have the building coverage and the impervious coverage in the zoning table on the left-hand side of the plan, and they are in conformance with the ordinance. And then the same goes for the height of each building or structure. The height will be in conformance with the ordinance and under, I believe it was 35 feet.
And as to gross floor area of a typical unit, there's a note about that on the plan?
Yes, it was note. So general note number 3 identifies the gross floor area of 3,000 square feet, not including the basement or the garage.
I wanted to follow up on a couple of items that came up at a prior hearing, I believe on the January 29, 2024 hearing. The topic of single-family detached development under the R4 residence district came up. In other words, development without seeking a conditional use for density modification. Had your office prepared a concept showing a subdivision under the R4 district without utilizing the density modification provisions of Article 19 of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, we did. Exhibit A16.
We're going to hand this out as well. Now, this is just a concept plan. This isn't a land development plan or anything like that, correct?
That is correct. Just a concept.
And would you describe this plan?
Yeah, so this is Exhibit A16. The plan is in the same orientation as the previous plans we discussed. Eagle Road is on the right-hand side going top to bottom. Stratford Avenue is at the top going left to right, and Forest Lane is on the bottom left. What this plan shows is the contemplation of a single-family development under the based R4 zoning, which requires a 7,000 square foot minimum lot area. We have shown a new road that would be a horseshoe shape on the site, accessing Stratford Avenue, and we've shown 31 dwellings that would be constructed. All the lots exceed 7,000 square feet. Many of the lots are much more than the minimum requirement. And the houses would range anywhere between a 1,300 square foot or 1,200 square foot footprint and a 3,000 square foot footprint, depending on the parcel or the lot.
And of course, under R4, there's no requirement for common open space in the zoning ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
And setbacks and things like that for accessory structures can be closer than under the density modification.
Yes. There's no buffer requirement. That's what you're referring to as along the perimeter. Accessory structures can encroach within setbacks.
Moving on to another question that I had in my notes from last time, I believe it was Commissioner Coates asked about what we call the neighbor plan, Exhibit A4, and I believe he asked the size of the common open space on that plan, and I think we had said we would come back with that information. Do you have a plan, a version of Exhibit A4? We're calling it A4A, where you've added that information.
Yes, Exhibit A4A.
Hand that out as well.
I believe the question was, what was the distance between, for instance, Unit 29 and 22, right? So the grouping of buildings with 22 and the grouping of building with 29, and the distance between Stratford Avenue and Unit 24 through 26. And so we've added the dimension on the plan to show that it would be 177 feet from Unit 22 to 29, and I believe it was 208 feet from the right-of-way line along Stratford Avenue to Unit 25.
And does this have the sizes of the open space as well?
Yes, in the bottom left corner of the plan, we have shown the open space. And so the purpose of the exhibit in the bottom left corner is the same layout that you see in the main plan, but what it does is it identifies what was considered as the official open space. And so we've included two areas of open space. The open space in the middle was about 35,000 square feet, and the area on the perimeter was I believe it says 64,000 square feet. And then there's a table right below the image, and it shows that 29% of the area is open space and stormwater management consists of about 3% of that area.
And as with the other plan, A12, in calculating the open space, the common open space, you didn't include required buffer areas?
That is correct. You can see, again, in that lower left corner, on the left-hand side of that image, you can see lines coming out kind of perpendicular to the site. Those are the Grant Lane properties. And there's a white space between the property line and the green, and that would be the buffer area that's not included as part of our open space calculation.
And you didn't count any of the empty lot on Forest Lane as part of the open space, is that right?
That is correct.
But as a practical matter, those areas will basically remain as green space, is that correct?
Yes.
That's all I have for Mr. Lambert at this time.
Mr. Moralier?
Mr. Royce, I would ask this time, frankly, there's a lot of information in the last hearing, but there's a lot of information packed into the last 45 minutes, specifically regarding stormwater runoff, which I think is the most important thing to these folks. I certainly was hoping that Mr. Lambert would speak a little more to their stormwater calculations, but I would like to take some time to figure out, to review the testimony from Mr. Lambert tonight regarding stormwater, look over their exhibit, talk to the engineer that this board has hired to review that, and come back at the next hearing with my cross-examination, which certainly is going to take a good chunk of time. What I would recommend, since it is 7:15, there's a good amount of time left tonight, I'm sure the neighbors have questions for Mr. Lambert, and maybe we have them ask their questions this evening.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sure, I thought I was projecting enough, but I apologize. Absolutely, thank you.
And I would like to know for an objection that, you know, I believe if there is time, Mr. Marlier should proceed as had been planned.
Okay. Well,
And I would note, Mr. Rice, that a number of exhibits were provided just tonight, a number of exhibits that are clearly need to be reviewed by an expert and reviewed by the engineer that this board has hired regarding this conditional use. I would also note that I did not receive the last two exhibits, so I think a little bit of time. We are on for just 3 weeks from now, for March 7th, I believe, and I certainly will come back fully prepared for cross-examination, not just of this evening, but the last hearing as well.
And I would note the only new exhibits were the drainage area maps and the concept sketch, and the A4A just had some requested information added to it. As was stated last time, Mr. Lambert is not available at the next hearing due to prior commitments, so
okay.
I think it would be, you know, fair to the applicant that we proceed as planned.
Mr. Brosman, do you have any other witnesses ready tonight?
I had assumed that Mr. Marlier was going to take a long time. He had indicated before that he probably would.
Is that
So
a no?
I'm
Is that a
not.
no? You don't have any other witnesses here?
I'm not really prepared to proceed with others at this time.
Okay. So,
John, one question. At the last hearing, didn't we ask for other witnesses to be prepared so we didn't have to have dead time? And that
Well-
if we got done early, that we would have
right.
more
Well, I
questions?
mean, what happened last time was, when this was scheduled, Mr. Lambert was not available. So Mr. Brosman represented that I think the planner or the traffic engineer would be here, and that changed since the last hearing, and I guess Mr. Lambert freed up his schedule, so he's here tonight. Mr. Brosman, you know, notified council of that. So I really don't want to waste, you know, the time that we have. I mean, I think the board is going to, we're looking at going to 9 o'clock, so we have about an hour and a half. Let's do this. Let's take about a 5-minute break so I can discuss this with the board and see how the board wants to proceed, and then we'll come back. But you don't have anyone else ready to go, Mr. Brosman? tonight, is that right?
I could put on some brief testimony, but I really prefer not to. We were not,
Okay.
we were going to do Mr. Lambert.
Well, we're
The
only-
two exhibits, by the way, they're not, they were additional information. It's about existing drainage patterns off the property, and Exhibit 816 is a concept for a development we haven't applied for. All of the other exhibits have been provided last time and also provided electronically as requested.
Okay, but just, I mean, going forward, you know, if, let's say, cross-examination, we started less than an hour ago. So if cross-examination went, let's say, a half hour, we'd be done, because you don't have any other witnesses available. So I think we try to do this as efficiently as possible, but just for now, let's take about a 5-minute break, and then, the board will come back and we'll discuss how we're going to proceed. So, Mr. Marlier, you want to defer your cross-examination of this witness until either March or whenever the next hearing is after that?
I would, Mr. Rice. I think that would
Okay.
be
All right, well, let's
best here.
we can go off the record now.
surface, but it's like one of those programs, and it doesn't take that much space to fly out. And then, yeah, it's a big thing. But now that everybody is Zoom,
It's nice because it's something like, it feels like paper. It's not backlit, so you can't, if you use it short, it's like, or you can use paper. So it's got limitations, but I respect the limitations.
am I doing better this time? I tried to slow down. Yeah, now you have it. You know, now you're like done.
Say whatever you want.
I don't have to worry about that. I'm reading every word.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna start back, and regarding the hearing, what we want to do is, since Mr. Lambert's here, and apparently he's not available March 7th, which is the next scheduled night. No, that was posted, that was unavailable. We talked about 3 dates, turned out that one was a conflict. So it's March 7th would be the next one, and then after tonight, we'll talk about further dates in March. So just in order to be as efficient as possible, one of the problems with zoning hearings is information doesn't get disclosed ahead of time. So you show up and you have plans and you have evidence and exhibits and things like that. So, so just for now, we're going to, at least for Mr. Morlier, per his request, we're going to defer his cross-examination. The residents, if they have questions for Mr. Lambert, can ask those tonight, and then can ask questions again when he's done, if you want. And then the board has some questions for Mr. Lambert, and I have some questions for Mr. Lambert regarding what's been testified to up to this point. And then Mr. Brosman might have some redirect, but we'll at least, we're going to go to 9 o'clock, so we'll make use of the time. Mr. Brosman may have another witness, but let's see how far we get with, and we'll start with the residents. Any questions you have about stormwater management?
John, can you repeat that? So the neighbors will have an opportunity tonight?
Yes.
And then you said when he's done, who's he?
When Mr. Lambert's, done with his testimony, because right now we're at cross-examination. Everybody gets that opportunity. The board gets the opportunity to ask questions. Mr. Brosman will probably have some redirect. That's the next piece. And then after that, there's another opportunity for recross.
But that will not be the March 7th meeting?
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah, because he won't be here on March 7th.
Okay.
So, anyway, that's where we're at, and just to try to use the time that we have in the meeting, because, it's tough to get the meeting room some nights. So let's start with
Mr.
any.
Rice, just one more clarifying question. So if we are waiting to have Mr. Moyer cross Mr. Lambert, won't he be back on another night?
Yes,
And at that time, would parties be able to continue to cross
yes,
on that evening as well?
yes.
So those of you who are parties and want to ask questions tonight would also have another opportunity after some more thinking about it and preparation when the other cross-examination
Yes.
is happening. Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so,
Mr. Rice, could I just make a comment? I don't, we'll see what happens then, but I just wanted to make a comment about, the objection I made. As I indicated, Mr. Lambert is not available on March 7th. We really thought that, his cross-examination would go forward tonight. As I indicated, these were only a couple of new exhibits, sort of tangential things, and as had been indicated, we expected that to take a long time, but I did want to acknowledge, and we really didn't want to go out of order, but had it happened that there was only a short period of cross-examination, we would be prepared to go forward with another witness as had been requested. So I didn't want to leave the board with the impression that we ignored
Okay.
what was said.
well, we might have time for that other witness
Yeah.
tonight. Let's see, let's see how far we get, and then, because that other witness is probably going to come back on March 7th, if they're available.
Yeah, we may not be able to finish that, but
Right.
I didn't want to leave the board with the impression that we, in the unlikely event that the cross-examination had ended quickly, we were going to just say we
Okay.
weren't prepared.
Okay. I mean, I understood. Look, these are, this is not a courtroom, but we try to, have some order and give everybody an opportunity. And there is no discovery, so you don't know ahead of time what somebody's going to testify to. This is new for a lot of you, and a lot of us up here, this is new. And so we'll see how far we get tonight. We have another date, and then when we're done tonight, we'll talk about further dates in March, okay? So with that, I'm going to call the resident parties' names, and if you have any questions tonight, feel free to, you'll have to come up to the microphone and ask Mr. Lambert questions. So, Steve Sherry, Megan Sherry, Ted Heimel, Mark Gato, Sharon Willis, David Willis, Mr. Chawla, Brian Curley. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Brian Curley, Radnor resident, 136 Fairfield Lane. Question I have for you, Mr. Lambert, on your Exhibit A15, describing the current runoff conditions in the neighborhood.
Would you like A, B, or C?
I believe A, where you were showing the direction of the runoff. Maybe make it a little bit smaller.
Yeah,
Can you explain to me why you stopped the runoff on Fairfield Lane at the end of the Hamilton property?
I apologize. The last sheet is much smaller than these.
So just to point out that the green ends at a Hamilton property on Fairfield Lane. There's another building and then a second house on the right side. That's my house, okay? I'm going to tell you that runoff comes straight down Fairfield Lane. And I don't understand why it's not included here, because Fairfield Lane's a Radnor Township. Seems like you've addressed TE Township runoff, but you haven't addressed Radnor on Fairfield Lane. Can you explain why?
So we looked at, as I said, it's publicly available information. It's the LiDAR topography. We looked at the LiDAR topography, and there appears to be a break line. And again, as I said, we were focused really on the Forest Lane area. If anything, this would overestimate the amount of water getting to Forest Lane slightly in that area. It is relatively flat in some of those areas, so it's a little bit hard to tell exactly where the water would go. And that's why we showed it that way. It was really just based on the LiDAR contours.
Well, the reality is that it's not level, as you try to explain it. There is a incline from 18 Forest Lane down Fairfield Lane. Additionally, what my concern is not only just the runoff from there, is that there's another Hamilton property that you did not include here. And obviously you didn't include it because Eagle Village does not have a stormwater plan, okay? However, just so the board understands that the runoff that's
I'm gonna
coming from the
object.
property.
Yeah.
There's no
Mr.
questions
Curley.
here.
Questions for the witness.
Okay,
Not a speech. Ask him what you just said. Ask him if he agrees with you.
do you agree that the runoff from the Hamilton properties, including Eagle Village, should also be included in your diagram?
We have not studied Eagle Village. We've studied the subject parcels.
Just so the board knows, Eagle Village is a Hamilton property. Thank you.
Mr. Lambert, do you know that that's a Hamilton property? That it's owned by the Hamilton estate?
I do not know who owns it right now. I know at one time it was owned by them. I don't know who owns it currently.
Okay. John Clemente? No questions. Caitlin Silver? Margaret Rushman? Mr. Serene?
Anajit Serene, 205 Stratford. So, Mr. Lambert, just wanted to confirm, I think I can infer this from your comments, but I wanted to hear it from you as well. So given the state of the the current stormwater system, I say this in quotation marks, of the current property, regardless of whether it was be a single-family development or the townhome conditional use application, would you say that the stormwater would be improved in either case?
Yes, currently there are no controls, no matter how the property is developed, assuming that it would go over the minimum thresholds, which any real development of substance would go over the thresholds, would require stormwater management controls.
The other question, and if this is not the appropriate forum, I'll retract it, but I think it may have bearing on this with regards to the plans being proposed here, is are you aware that the neighborhood, the area along Stratford in particular, is a single-family residential neighborhood, and it has moved more in that direction over time. The bed and breakfast is gone, and the St. Honoré development is building more single-family homes. So, wouldn't this be a development that would that would be more contrary to the nature of the current neighborhood?
No, I would disagree. I believe that this site is an appropriate site as a transitional use, and I've pulled up Exhibit A6, which is an aerial photo showing the surrounding area, including the St. Honoré development that you mentioned. It shows the site inset onto an aerial. And if you look just to the east of this site, so directly across the street from this site on Eagle Road, there's a large office complex, Stratford office complex. To the bottom of the page, there's a large shopping center. And so this use is a good transitional use from those more intense commercial uses to the single-family residences you reference. And from a kind of an aesthetic standpoint, this use allows actually the aesthetic along Stratford Avenue that you really have a cadence of two homes that you see facing Stratford Avenue. You're going to have a large open space similar to the green space that's there, and then a cadence of two single-family residences, at the end facing Stratford. So you have kind of two big open space and two. So it does act as a very good transitional use between those more intense commercial uses and the single-family residence uses.
Right, but to be clear, this whole neighborhood is single-family homes, including the existing property that the application is to develop. So I'm confused when you say, to help me understand this, that moving away from single-family homes is somehow more consistent with what exists in that area today.
It's a transitional use.
So it's a difference. It's a change.
It's
different from what's there.
If you let me answer the question. If it's a transition between the higher intensity commercial uses and the single family residence, very similar to Villa Stratford. It's labeled here as Madison Lane, which was, again, a density modification development that was, it has single family residences on the kind of upper right side, was what is identified as Madison Lane. And then the commercial unit uses on the other three sides, and this again is transitioning between those higher commercial uses and the residential uses.
So let me ask you about the Villa Stratford's come up before, and I'm just very surprised how that's even remotely a parallel. Just looking at the map that you've presented here, that's a de minimis percentage of that property abuts single-family homes. Right? It's largely surrounded by commercial use. That's not true of the area that we're talking about.
Do you agree with Mr. Serene?
I was going to point out that was a density modification development, is why it actually got a variance to proceed as a density modification because it didn't include the minimum lot area. This site includes the minimum lot area for the density modification, and I believe it prepares a appropriate use, a transitional use between the higher density commercial and the residential.
No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Satterfield, any questions? Ms. Lafarge, any questions? Mr. Holloway, any questions? No questions. Okay, that's the party list. Okay, Ms. Mahoney, come on up. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Lambert, I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
I've been living at this property for 30 years. I live at 5 Grant Lane, intersecting Stratford and Grant, right on the corner. And within the past month, my property has, my basement has flooded twice. I have severe problems with water. And what you're explaining is that I can't really understand where these storm drains are going to go. But I want to know, how is this going to affect me? From what I can see on your property thing there, it looks like 3/4 of my property will be protected. But over the years, Stratford Avenue, Mrs. Hamilton there was a tremendous erosion problem, and she would fill it in with topsoil all the time. I've gone to Radnor, I can't tell you how many times, asking them to, you want, okay. Yeah. And also, will fixing my property help the people downstream of Stratford Avenue?
I just wanted to clarify that, so make sure I'm looking at the right one. So using Exhibit A12 Sheet 4, you're right at the corner of Stratford Avenue and Grant Lane.
That's correct. And I'm the one with the little dirty pond all the time. It fills up with water,
Yeah.
and nothing grows on my lawn, no grass.
So I'm going to use Exhibit A15
Okay.
to help out here. So your house, if we use A15, let me see if we can. Grant Lane is the blue area.
You
shown
on A15A, Rob?
A15A, that is correct, is the blue area. And then we have the pink area, and the pink area goes along Stratford Avenue. And
That's
so
correct.
on the right-hand side is Eagle Road. And bear with me, I'm using a lot of words, but for the record. And so when somebody reads it later, they can
I understand.
follow along. And so we have Eagle Road on the right side. We have Stratford going across the top, and then we have the blue area of Grant Lane. So what you're describing is what's shown as the pink area, starting from roughly Eagle Road, going across the frontage of the property along Stratford, and then it reaches your property. So all of that pink area currently drains out towards Stratford and runs down Stratford, and some of it may get in your yard, some of it may go beyond your property. What we have shown, and I'm going to use A15B, this is the plan showing the proposed plan, and I'm going to switch back to A12 in one second. So you can see the pink area that is to the right of your property on this plan is vastly reduced, right? And so if we go back to A15A, just for a quick comparison, you can see the size. I don't have the exact square footage, but you can see just graphically the size of the area that drains there now and the size of the area that will drain to there in the future is much reduced, right? So we're capturing that runoff. So if I go back to Exhibit A12, and I'm going to go to Sheet 5. So how we're accomplishing that is we're actually installing inlets. And so we're capturing the water that would get out to Stratford to the east or right of the driveway that's furthest to the west. So it's labeled Driveway A on this plan, or Drive A. We're going to install inlets adjacent to that driveway, which will capture the runoff running down Stratford from this site and be able to put it into controlled stormwater management systems. So we're really removing that volume of water from the water that would flow across your property.
Could you go back to the controlled one, the one that was before this? Yes, that one. It looks like my property is totally engrossed in that. So that means my property won't have any water too?
No, so what this is showing is A15B is showing that the pink area is really just it's showing all of the drainage area continuing to go down Stratford, right? And so we can't control that. That's downhill of where our site is. We have added the inlet out in front of our driveway on Stratford, which really cuts off that runoff that currently comes from the property that gets out there. So there will be a small area of Stratford that still gets to your property. Your property, obviously, any rain falls on your property is still within that pink area is what this is showing.
But if you just do it to the end where the double line is, that's where I have the problem. That's where the water jumps the blacktop and lands on my lawn.
So we're reducing.
You're reducing, but you're not fixing.
We are reducing the water that leaves this site and currently gets there, so we're capturing that and controlling it. You know, we're not doing anything on your property, no. We're capturing all the water, so the amount of water getting there is going to be vastly reduced from what gets there today.
So you're just telling me you'll help, but you're not going to fix my problem.
We are not proposing any improvements on your property.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Shuda?
Good evening, Mr. Lambert. Hi, Joe Shuda, 14 Forest Lane. Just a couple questions. Regarding your testimony, you mentioned probably at least 2 or 3 times the direction of the pre-construction runoff. And if I recall, that was, your reference, the lower left-hand corner of the property, is that correct?
So I was used various examples. So A15A was the blue area, the A4 area, which is predominantly the property, includes the rear of some of the Grant Lane properties. And what this was just showing was where that runoff goes. So we were looking at, and I believe it's actually your house, which we were showing as the bottom, and what generated this plan was, I believe, your comments a long time ago about water and where the water was running, and so we started an analysis to see where that water was coming from.
Okay. So that particular direction with the construction, regardless if it's townhomes or single homes, that direction, if I understood your testimony correctly, will will change, or will it be eliminated? Will there be runoff in that direction still?
I'm not sure I understand your question. However, I'll provide an answer. So water is going to continue to drain with the contours of the site. So it will continue to drain to the lower left corner out toward Forest Lane. What we're doing when we look at Exhibit A12 is we're adding all the stormwater controls. We're adding all the stormwater controls on site to control the rates and volume. So we're reducing, looking at the way we do stormwater is we look at those points of interest. And so that lower left corner was called point of interest A in our study. And what that does is we're looking at how much water gets there currently, and we would reduce the rate and volume of runoff getting to that same point after development.
So if I understand what you just said, that lower corner in this particular plan would capture the runoff into the retention basin. Is that correct?
So yes, Exhibit A12, Sheet 4, shows the proposed development.
Okay.
And it has a series of stormwater basins that will control the rate and volume of runoff.
Okay. And those basins have been designed to accept a 100-year rain, and what type of volume and what type of rate of rain does that reflect?
Yeah, so that was looking at...
yeah, it was hard to see back then.
Yep, no problem at all. Just make sure I'm looking at the correct one. So Exhibit A13 was a summary table. And this was the township, Radnor Township. So this was where we were talking about the fictitious pre-development condition. And in that condition, for like the 100-year storm, you'd have 16, a little over 16 cubic feet per second running off, right? So CFS, cubic feet per second. In the post-development condition, you have just over 10, right? So we're reducing from what currently runs off
Right,
there.
so it's about a 30% reduction roughly, or?
39%.
Okay.
But again, I point out that's the reason we provided the other exhibits, which you've seen before, where we
Right.
talked about actual conditions versus what the code required conditions are. So
Right.
this is reflecting the code required conditions that we're exceeding the code by about 39%. in that
And
100-year
again,
storm.
I'm sorry to be redundant here. Is that, that amount of rain would equate to what in inches?
I believe it's 7.43 inches over a 24-hour period.
24-hour period, all right. So at this juncture, the solution for runoff coming in that predominant direction that you pointed out, which is the lower left-hand area, would be captured in the basin, that's correct, and then would go into the Forest Lane stormwater line?
That is correct.
And that line, based on all your calculations, you feel is adequate to take that volume of water?
So we're reducing, by 40% the amount of water that gets down to that location.
And taking it a step further, have you or any of your colleagues looked further down the line where that Forest Lane line discharges to determine if the line that it discharges in is in patent and adequately in condition to handle any additional runoff?
We have not done a full analysis of the municipal stormwater system. As you know, it crosses the municipalities, it reaches PennDOT. We have not studied the full network of the stormwater system, but what we can say affirmatively is that we are making a great improvement, a reduction of runoff leaving the site.
Okay, so subsequently then, if there's any issues, in your opinion, if that line on Old Eagle School Road is not in good condition or it's not patent and has some form of blockage, the problem, even with the reduction, still could result in flooding in our area, do you think?
We are not in control of the Old Eagle School.
Right.
I don't believe any municipality is. I believe that's a PennDOT line.
Okay. Trying to figure out what's the best solution to get PennDOT on board here. I don't know if the township has any leverage that can help us on that, because I think that's got to be examined, the PennDOT line. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ask questions, Mr. Schuster.
Okay. Well, again, is there any chance that the applicant can work with the townships involved to at least solicit PennDOT to make some evaluation of that line, something as simple as running a camera through it to see if it's open, not go to any great expenditure, but if we find out what the issue is, possibly that could contribute to a solution.
We would have no issue, requesting the municipalities to work with PennDOT. I have no problem doing that, but that would not be in necessarily the purview of this application.
All right. Well, appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Pache?
No questions.
Greg Zari?
My name is Gregory Zary, S-Z-A-R-Y, 6 Forest Lane. Mr. Lambert, I'd like to understand a couple of things about the stormwater management system, if you could help me. I don't understand how the basins, the underground basins work. Are they a detention or are they a retention? And if you could explain the difference between those two.
So we have a series of basins. Some of the basins are designed for infiltration, where we got a good infiltration rate. Some of the basins are simply designed for rate control, and they're all interconnected with pipes, right? So we have, and the basin is really a large void space, so a volume underground that's meant to hold the water and release it at a metered rate, and that can be released through infiltration, and it can be released through the pipe network.
Okay. So the intent of the stormwater management system is to collect rainwater before it runs off the site and place it into these underground detention basins.
That is correct.
Okay. And that's why the numbers look so good that you're proposing, in that it's reducing the amount of runoff off of the site.
The numbers look at the runoff leaving the site after it goes through the stormwater basin. So the basins are still releasing water. It's just releasing it at a metered rate.
But it's not releasing it at grade. It's not surface water.
It's not surface water, correct.
Okay.
But that table is not just looking at straight surface water. It's just looking at total volume of water, or total rate of water.
So you're calculating how much water is being percolated into the ground as well, being absorbed by the ground?
There is a volume that will be percolated back into the ground, yes.
Okay. And that's part of your calculation?
Yes.
Okay. So were there soil tests and evaluation of the soil properties on the site?
Yes, there were.
And based on those tests, were there any areas that indicated conditions where the soil was not percolating, was not absorbing water?
Yes, one of the areas, it wasn't a limiting zone, but had very little permeability. The other areas had good permeability rates with a friable soil. And we have focused our infiltration in the area that we had good rates, which is typical in a project like this.
Is it reasonable to expect that the construction activities on the site will further compact the soil and reduce its ability to percolate?
In the basins, the bottom of the basins are protected. They're also relatively deep, which would avoid the excess compaction in those areas and would still allow for the permeability in the stormwater basins where we're relying on it.
So currently, when water falls on the site, it lays in the field, it runs across the site, and it rejoins the water cycle, correct? The water cycle being it's conducted to a lake, stream, river, it's evaporated, it's what are some of the terms? Evaporation, transpiration, where it's absorbed by plants and trees, and then also it's conducted to a municipal stormwater system. That's a good description of what happens with that rainwater when it falls?
Yes, there's, I believe there's just under 2 acres of impervious on that site too. So there's, water that hits the impervious surfaces run off. There's landscaped areas, there's impervious areas. And yes, you have runoff and then it goes into the water cycle.
So if we look at the stormwater management system, if you can confirm that it is collecting roof runoff from all of the units via gutters and downspouts?
Correct.
And it's collecting that water and conducting it directly to piping underground towards the basins?
Yes.
And water falling on the impervious areas is being collected by the stormwater inlets and conducted directly to those basins?
Yes.
And the water falling on Stratford Avenue, which did not enter the site, it went down Stratford and some of it into Grant. That water is now being collected and put into these stormwater management systems as well, correct?
Yes, it's being put into the systems and controlled.
Okay. So is it true then that this system is sort of bypassing the natural water cycle? It's not giving the water a chance to evaporate or to be absorbed by the plant material?
No, it would have the same opportunity it does today, you know, when you look at it from a site basis, right? Today it has that opportunity before it leaves the site, but then you get direct runoff. Here, you know, we have that opportunity where it's running across the surface in various areas, but then we collect it, and the infiltration component is meant to mimic natural conditions to promote that infiltration back into the ground.
Okay. So is it reasonable to believe that there's going to be an increase in the amount of water that's being introduced into the ground?
An increase from what?
By the use of these basins that are going to percolate.
But what is your metric when you say increase? What's the datum that you're referring to?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an engineer, but the way I see it is right now the water isn't being absorbed very well by the soil because of the amount of impervious and because of the poor condition of the soil. But now, with the improvements being made, the water is being placed in these detention basins, which will allow it to enter the soil over longer periods of time than it would if it just ran off the site during a storm. So I'm anticipating that we're going to be seeing more groundwater coming off of this, leaving this site and heading downhill towards the residents on Grant Lane, and Forest Lane and Fairfield.
Groundwater doesn't necessarily follow the topography that you have. I would also point out that this is a very, you know, in relative to groundwater, a relatively small site. Again, the regulation that's required of us is that we provide infiltration for the increase in runoff from a 2-year storm.
Well, the Radnor Township stormwater management guidelines indicate that runoff as well as groundwater is to be addressed. This system seems to be, and by your testimony, you've only addressed surface runoff. You haven't addressed groundwater to my satisfaction.
Mr. Lambert, let me just, do you know how deep the groundwater is on this site?
So our testing, I don't know how deep it is. Our testing went down to 10 feet and had no signs of groundwater.
Okay.
So our soil test, we dug to a depth of 10 feet and did not hit any groundwater.
There was a test pit with a backhoe and
Several.
10 feet and no groundwater.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, sorry, I
No,
thought of a question, but go ahead.
that's quite all right. So again, I'm trying to understand where this water goes when it does enter the ground, because there is, I don't know if the term is an aquifer, but there is water that travels across the properties below the grade, and everyone in the neighborhood that I've spoken with, and I've gotten testimony from them, that they are getting increasing amounts of groundwater due to the rainfall intensities that we've seen. But our concern is that if there is more groundwater, more rainwater being injected into the ground by this system, which again we appreciate the fact that it's addressing the runoff, and we all suffer from that. But I'm just concerned that it's jumping from the frying pan into the fire, and that it's going to be adding even more water into the ground, and that water is going to travel, I guess, from wet to dry if it doesn't go downhill, and if it's going to leave that site. So I imagine a good bit of it is going to be going towards the adjacent properties and contributing to.
Do you agree, Mr. Lambert, with that statement? Thank you.
I do not.
Can you explain where that water is going to go when it gets put into the ground?
So, first off, I'm not sure I believe you referred to it as testimony of neighbors about what the groundwater is. I'm not aware of individual issues in individual houses. We, as a company, end up looking at a lot of properties after storm events and extreme storm events, as you mentioned, and identify issues with individual properties that they have, whether it's gutters, grading, structural issues of, when I say structural, I mean grades and the way topography directs water, related to individual properties, and we help them. But I have not looked at any Forest Lane properties for those conditions, just for the record. From a groundwater perspective, if you look at groundwater and where groundwater is, and if you just wanted to look at simple, make simple assumptions, right? We have not done
Mr. Lambert, you'd agree that there are areas in the state where groundwater is very close to the surface?
Absolutely.
I mean,
We dug down to 10 feet and didn't find any.
right.
But
That's why I asked the question. But do you know if there's any private wells in that part of the township?
I'm not aware of any private wells. There are the area serviced by public water and public sewer.
That's what I mean, sometimes there's private wells that people use for landscaping, irrigation.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any.
All right.
And if we made an assumption that you have a groundwater that's uniformly distributed over the, let's call it the two blue areas and the green area, I think we said that
You're
was...
back to A15A?
Yes, I'm sorry, A15A. And on the bottom of that table, there was an area, right? So we had the areas identified there, and it was about 550,000 square feet. It was the area that was identified. If you took the volume of water that will infiltrating, and again, making massive assumptions without looking at anything, but I'm trying to answer the question, and you distributed that water into that uniformly graded groundwater. I don't know what elevation that was. We dug down to 10 feet and did not have any on our site, but let's assume it was a flat lake, and it was all surface water, and we put all of the water we had in there. I think it's 1/8 of an inch. I did the calculation. I think it's about 1/8 of an inch of water would be evenly distributed. It's not going to be evenly distributed. All the water that we're infiltrating isn't going to get to that area, and so I would equate it to more like putting your finger in a bathtub. Is when you put your finger in the bathtub theoretically raises an elevation, but it's really imperceptible. And I would say that, just from a very simple area look at it, volume, is that the amount of water that we're infiltrating here, although it meets all the township requirements, and we are required to infiltrate it, I just want to be clear, we're required to provide infiltration. Our calculations show we're meeting and exceeding that by a percentage, and we have infiltration rates that show that the soils will accept that water. We'll have drain down times that are in conformance with the ordinance, and we did not hit any limiting features when we did those tests. So all of our infiltration will meet the code. But even if we could immediately get that to groundwater, which isn't going to happen, it's really going to be imperceptible to the depth of it.
You had mentioned just now that the soil would, I forget the exact wording, retain the groundwater.
Infiltrate.
Infiltrate. Well, I think he used another word. But do you know how much soil is being removed from this site, will be removed from this site when the excavation takes place for the basements on these units?
I have not done that calculation.
I've done that calculation. Am I allowed to provide new information?
Why don't you wait until it's your turn for time to present?
Okay.
This is just cross-examination. If you have a study, a report, a calculation, you'll have a chance to do that.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to piggyback some questions onto the questions Mr. Sarit had asked earlier in the evening. Yes. Okay, good. He was talking about the development and the nature of the development and the single-family units versus multifamily units. If you can bring up that map again. So the properties that are immediately adjacent to the site, you described as commercial, the Eagle Village, business, where the offices are, but then the rest of the properties are residential. So of the residential properties that abut this site, are any of them apartment buildings?
No.
Are any of them townhouses?
Of the residential properties that we
Correct.
discussed, there are single-family homes.
Okay, so they're all single-family homes. And you mentioned that the St. Henri site development is single-family homes because the site was too small to do multifamily, if that was the developer's option or choice. But needless to say, it's being developed as single-family houses, correct?
Yes, it's being developed. I don't know the history of the current developer.
And I appreciate the fact that you're calling this a transition site, I believe, between the higher density commercial developments on two sides of it. But if the property's intent as part of the conditional use approval is to maintain the nature of the site, of the properties, the neighborhood, single-family housing, to me, on this site would be more in order, in line with maintaining the nature of the site. Does that sound accurate?
I don't agree. I answered that.
All right, well, we'll allow the township to make that decision then. All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber Levy?
Yeah,
Questions?
I do. One. Amber Levy, Radnor Conservancy. My question for you is, you use the standard of a meadow as a definition or as your metric for calculating stormwater. What is the definition of meadow that you are using?
It refers to a runoff coefficient, and so there are runoff coefficients that are based on different soil conditions, either an A, B, or C soil, and then you have, impervious coverage gives you, kind of the highest runoff, and then it goes down. You have gravel, you have meadow. So the metric that we use as a preceding condition is meadow.
Got it. Which kind of sounds like field, but it sounds...
It's really about runoff, right? And so
Right,
you
right.
have, it looks at, there was a study that showed how much runoff comes from different characteristics, or different runoff characteristics from each type of cover condition.
Mhm.
And it gets put into the model to determine how much runoff you get from it.
Got it. And if we wanted to look at that, where does that used in, like, where is that model at? Is that in
the table? It's
is that like a
I'd have to-
state development?
It was
code
TR, I
or
believe
a-
it was under TR 55, I believe is where the model is. But in the township ordinance, I believe they have.
in the township ordinance.
I believe the
Okay.
township ordinance actually has the table within the stormwater ordinance. I'd have to double check, but it's common practice.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Come on up, please. Are you a party?
Yes.
What is your name?
Cindy Hansen, Hansen, 6 Hydro Lane.
Say it again.
Cindy Hansen, Hansen.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I just have a couple of questions. Last meeting, you mentioned stormwater management controls during development. Can you explain what they are?
Yes, so they'll have erosion and sediment control measures that will be reviewed both by the township and by the county. And we show, let me see here, I just want to get to the right exhibit. So Exhibit A12, Sheet 6, shows our proposal for erosion sediment control measures. It has like a stone construction entrance for vehicles entering and leaving the site. It will have silt socks, silt fencing, inlet protection to be able to control the runoff from the site.
And what happens if the runoff cannot be controlled? Like it flows into everybody's property.
So, as I said before, both the township and the county will issue a permit for this. If there are breaches to those erosion and sediment controls, typically there are remediation measures that are made to the breaches. If say for instance, a silt fence or silt sock gets overwhelmed, there will be modifications made and additional measures installed to limit any of those breaches.
Thank you. There is an existing exit onto Eagle Road. Did you consider using it and trying to fit it into your plan?
There's an ordinance requirement in the township that says that, and I don't have I can look up the code section, but I won't take the time unless you want me to read the code section.
No, thank you. I've heard enough of the code.
That says that there's two sections. One is that if you are on a corner parcel with a major collector in a local street, so Eagle Road is a major collector, and then Stratford Avenue is a local street, that you should take your access off of the local street and not put the access on the major collector. And so following the ordinance, we have had the driveway shown on Stratford Avenue.
Okay, and you keep referring to it as a driveway. Is a driveway different than a road?
Yes, this is a driveway. So the ordinance provides for driveways for this type of development.
For 38 townhomes with driveways?
Yes.
You don't have to have a road?
Correct. I'll be specific, is section 25540 is multifamily and attached dwelling residential development. And I read them earlier tonight with subsection C, which was access and circulation, and subsection E, which is driveways. And so this is a driveway providing, convenient access to the units.
So that means it's not as wide, I guess.
We've actually, one of the township engineer comments was to provide a driveway that was of 28 feet in width. And so we've actually provided a 28-foot wide driveway.
Okay, and you were mentioning the 2 parking spaces per townhome. Is it a 2-car garage or a 1-car garage with a parking space?
It would be a 2-car garage.
Okay.
And so the 2-car garage is sized so you have 2 parking spaces within the garage. In addition to that, spaces that we have not counted is the driveway apron for each individual unit is also actually sized to be able to fit 2 cars, but we did not count that in our calculation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think I have all the resident parties. So, so we had discussed, I know I have some questions, the board has some questions. It may be easier for me to go first, since I'm just one person and there's 5 other people here that are going to have questions. So let me, I'm going to go backwards from that testimony just to clarify some things on the plan. Mr. Lambert, the question that was just asked about the driveway, what's the address? How's the U.S. Postal Service going to put an address on a driveway?
I believe that's really up to the addresses are assigned. I think it's partly by the township, partly by the post office, and there can be lots of different ways to associate it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a street. There are campus buildings on campuses that all have addresses, and really it's a function of 911 also responds to those. And so it isn't related to a driveway or a road necessarily. It would be it could be a unit on Stratford Avenue, right? It could say it was 230 Stratford Avenue, Unit 1. They may assign a name to the internal driveway and be able to have different numbers on the internal driveway.
But you realize that, I mean, these are individual townhomes that are going to have addresses, right? Of some sort.
No, that's what I just said, is they could be.
Let me finish. And that, you know, Amazon is going to come to, you know, 201 driveway B and 202 driveway B, whatever the designation is. So that seems to me just a practical issue if we're calling this a driveway. The other question I had about that is there going to be, I'm assuming mail will be delivered house to house. Is there a plan for like a group mailbox?
Oftentimes in development like this, there will be a group mailbox.
Okay.
Again, that's really up to the postmaster. It's coordination with the postmaster.
Okay, so maybe there's going to be a group mailbox for everybody, or maybe more than one. And then on the same issue, looking back at, I think we looked at A4, but the initial conditional use plan called this Road A and Road B, and now it's called Drive A and Drive B. So why the change?
I think it was just really a nomenclature. I think it caused confusion to call it Road A and Road B, and so we've tried to clarify that and call it Drive A and Drive B.
But there's no other reason other than that, just.
Correct. It was really just nomenclature that caused confusion.
Okay. On this plan, the units on the right side, 33 through 38, I think it is. Behind that green area is not any part of the calculated open space, right?
Correct. The area between 33 and 38 and Eagle Road is not counted in any of our open space. Our open space is only counted in the internal area. It's all connected. It's the darker green on Exhibit A12, Sheet 4.
Okay. So behind those units, between those units and the road, then is that area going to drain down to the underground basin that's underneath the driveway for units 1 through 4? Is that going to drain in that direction?
I just want to pull up the grading plan just to verify. There may be, so in the area that is, that you referred to, the roof drains from those units, what was it, 33 to 38.
Right.
The roof drains will all be collected. The surface runoff is going to be uncontrolled on that side. If during land development there was a desire to collect and control it, we would be able to, collect and control that runoff. But right now, it's currently shown as uncontrolled runoff on that side.
So, and again, this is just a practical question because I've seen this over. So just the roof drains, and will there be sump pumps? Do you know?
I do not know if there will be sump pumps.
Okay, but the roof drains that are going to come off of 33 through 38, are they going to go out onto the ground, or are they going to be tied in?
They'll be tied into a collection system, so they'll be
underground piping.
Underground piping, correct.
So there won't be a swale over there
Correct.
running down behind those buildings? Okay. And that, is that true for the whole development?
Yes.
Okay. Just going back to the green plan, whatever that was.
Yeah. I believe it was A12, Sheet 4.
Yeah. Just, if you can go back.
The color helps.
So in the middle, there's 84,807 square feet of open space, and then on either side, and there's 4 units, and then 5 units down the bottom. The buildings themselves, so if I buy a townhome, let's say number 32, which is coming off of Drive B. I've got a little white area around there. Is that all potential impervious surface? Because you have a building footprint, which is, I think you said, I don't know, what is the building footprint for these units?
36 by 56. Unit 1 in the bottom right of A12 sheet 4 gives both dimensions.
Okay. But you have a building footprint, and then you have an area like thin strips of white around that. What is that for?
That's to demonstrate that we were not including that in the open space. It was area that was adjacent to the building that just was not included in the open space. It's still, you're going to have a mix of landscaping, maybe a little bit of hardscape, but mainly it's going to be landscaping. You might have your stormwater pipe running in that white zone. So we were not running the storm pipes there underneath the open space. We were running them in that white zone.
But am I going to be able to build a patio, a deck? Pave that area that's in white?
It's not intended. All the improvements related to the unit are meant to be within that footprint. As the code requires, is really a concept footprint. It doesn't say that it's not a precise footprint at this juncture. There might be more undulations in the depth of the unit to provide that outdoor space that you're referring to.
But I mean, you'd admit that on a townhome like this, someone's going to want to put a hardscape patio out the back door, right?
I didn't disagree. What I was clarifying is what we're showing is kind of a unit footprint. And don't think of the unit as just being all interior space. There may be a portion of that, it's 36 feet wide by 56 feet long. There may be a section of the structure that ends up being 46 feet long, and you wind up with a section of patio that's a 10-foot deep patio within that footprint, right? So we've shown the maximum, footprint of that, but really, when it gets built, it may actually have smaller portions to provide that outdoor space.
Okay, but again, the white areas are outside of the open space, right?
Correct.
And theoretically, they could all be impervious surfaces, correct?
I'm sorry, when you say they...
Could be. Theoretically, they could all be impervious surfaces.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're referring to when you say they all should.
The white area.
The white area, yes. We would have to make sure that it would continue to conform with the impervious coverage requirements, but yes, that area could be occupied.
Okay. Could be impervious, not only occupied, could be impervious.
It could be impervious.
Okay. So is that considered in your stormwater calculations?
No, we have included our stormwater based on the footprints, knowing that they're a maximum footprint right now. If we exceeded the amount that's currently designed, the stormwater system would be designed, but that's not what's currently proposed. As we go through the land development process.
But that would have to all be considered, right?
Absolutely.
Because people want to put decks on.
Absolutely. Any of those changes are stringently controlled during the land development and permitting process, and then building permits. They would need building permits for all those. There are inspections of what gets built, and they all have to be in conformance with the proposed plans.
Can I interject? Sorry. You have it in other plans that shows like a deck. Like if you look at A-4A, you may have it for this one also.
Yeah, so that's a different plan. I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
So A4A, we were showing, these are actually different footprints on some of them. And this was showing those outdoor spaces. When we prepared A12, we actually simplified it and just said the kind of the maximum area that were dedicated to the unit was the 36 by 56 area.
Yeah, the simple rectangle.
Yes, we simplified it.
So, and the basins that you identified on here, and I guess I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4 underground stormwater facilities. So you You have the,
There's actually there's one more on the Forest Lane lot
right,
is probably
I'm
what you're
sorry,
missing,
yeah,
but that's okay.
The extra lot. So that, they're all underground stormwater basins, you know, with piping and stone and, you know, that.
Correct. There's some that are pipe systems. There were some that were a proprietary a product that has a larger void capacity.
Okay, and there will be infiltration at the bottom of those basins.
Correct. And there's a Hilbeck Engineering and Geosciences soil study that's included at the end of the stormwater report, which shows where those permeability tests were taken to demonstrate conformance with the infiltration.
So the stormwater, there's no above-ground swales proposed on this?
There may be, there are some swales for collection, and it would be a swale leading to an inlet. It may be capturing surface runoff that we're trying to capture and control rather than having it run off. So there'll be a mix of, you know, swales, inlets, roof drains, all collecting water.
In the open space, the 84,807 square feet, are there inlets in the open space anywhere?
I believe a portion of the open space includes the two stormwater basins, but if you, let me go back to the.
I'm just wondering, the water that's coming off the open space,
There will be.
which direction is it going? And
There will be collection, but I just wanted to point out in the table on the sheet of A12 sheet 4, on the left-hand side, there's the common open space requirement of 25%, and as we went over, there's a maximum of 10% for stormwater management within that, and the table demonstrates that we have 26% open space proposed and 7.9% stormwater, so it shows that we were in conformance with that.
Is there any, you testified at, I think last time about and tonight, about the size of the buildings, the area, the height, et cetera. Is there any plan to put anything on top of these townhomes, like rooftop, living space?
No living space that I'm aware of.
Okay. So is there a builder selected for it?
Not that I'm aware of.
The plan that you, Mr. Brosman asked you about tonight, the single-family plan.
Yes.
Can we put that up for a minute?
A16.
A16. So what was the purpose of presenting this?
It was just to demonstrate a conceptual layout of single-family homes under the R4 zoning and what that could look like, right? And so I know there was a question, Mr. Howder, about building single families and what that could look like. This was just a concept sketch that our office prepared to show what 7,000 square foot lots could look like.
Okay. But, I mean, does it comply with township ordinances?
Generally, it's not fully designed. As I said, it's a concept plan. The size of all these are greater than what is required by code. Although they show 7,000, it's 7,000 measured to the right-of-way lines and not to the center of the street as the township permits. So some of the lots could get smaller, but this was an effort to show what it could look like as a single-family development.
Okay. So there's 1, 2, 3, there's 5 driveways onto Eagle Road. There's nothing in the code that would prohibit that?
There was the code section talking about secondary access off of the Stratford Avenue. I'd have to double check the code section to see where if it says if feasible or any along that language, but we were showing that similar to the development directly across Stratford Avenue of the single-family homes that have access directly to Eagle Road, it was being consistent with that development that was approved just a few years ago.
Well, yeah, but that was fully engineered.
Understood, but it provided the access to Eagle Road, directly to Eagle Road, for the properties at the corner of Stratford and Eagle. So the northwest corner of Stratford and Eagle, there are a few houses that have direct access to Eagle Road, similar to this development.
So this has a U street also, but this plan also has lot 25 and 26 with driveways right onto Stratford Avenue, relatively close to that intersection. Is that permissible?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe, I can pull up the code section if you like, but it's, to have a driveway, it wasn't a great distance from the intersection.
Okay. And how about the road? Does that, the road on this plan, does that meet the requirements for distance between a road and an intersection?
Yes.
But you haven't fully engineered it. This is just
Absolutely not.
show what.
This was a conceptual plan taking the kind of bulk requirements of what the code requires and depicting what that could look like.
Okay, and then the, just going back to A12, and the record plan, or not the record plan. Get the right plan.
A12 sheet 4, I believe.
Yes. Oh, it's right in front of me. So you testified that some part of the stormwater system is within the open space. So could you just identify that again, please?
Yes, so using A12 sheet 4, to the left of unit 25, you see a dashed line, and then there's a text note, and I'll read.
So that dash line box?
Yeah, that dash line box is a stormwater management system that says PCSM BMP infiltration bed number 2.
Right.
And on the other side of unit 28, you can see again that dash line says PCSM BMP infiltration bed number 1.
Okay, so that's that part, that's included in the open space calculation, and it's also part of the stormwater system.
Correct, and as I pointed out, is the zoning table on the left side of sheet 4 identifies that the stormwater management encompasses 6,654 square feet of the open space, which represents 7.9%, which is conforming with the 10% maximum required by the code.
And then just one other thing. I mean, this plan, you know, what's being proposed here, this whole site will get bulldozed pretty much, right? I mean, you're going to have to clear all the impervious existing paving, all the improvements, all the houses that are there. All of that gets leveled, and it's not quite back to meadow.
All those improvements, all the existing improvements will be removed, yes.
Okay, so we'll be starting with a lot of earth moving, you know, and basically clearing the whole site. Nothing's going to be maintained.
There are certain areas that will be maintained. There's some groves of trees that we're maintaining. But you know, there will be a earth moving, which is normal with the development of a site.
Right. Okay. I don't really have anything else to ask right now. We're at 10 of 9.
I think we all do. We all have questions.
Okay. Well, do we want to, Kathy? Commissioner Agnew seems eager.
I would start at the end and go down the line if that's okay. I think it's easier. No, I would
Start down.
Is that okay? It just keeps it easy.
Yeah, all right, quick question. When you did the 10 feet, Where on the property was that done, the depth?
So we did, so you're referring to, just to make sure I'm
Yeah.
clear,
So you're looking-
the infiltration testing when we did the digging.
Yeah, like I really want to know where the groundwater table is, and then let's say
We
high
did,
and low.
so for the record, we did not run into any groundwater table.
Yeah, 10 feet you didn't.
For the 10 feet, we did not run into any groundwater table or signs of groundwater.
How much difference, like, did you do that in the lowest section or at a higher spot?
We did several different locations. Some were kind of in the middle of the site, some were to the lower left, and then in the kind of bottom left of the site, not in the Forest Lane property, but in the bottom left of the site, we also did a test down there.
Yeah, at that spot, how deep is the basin?
How deep is the basin?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
Because typically you want to be 2 feet above the groundwater table.
Right, and so when we did the test, we, I don't have I can look up if you want me to, but we did the testing down. We did not find any. The bottom of the basin is above 2 feet from the bottom of the hole, right? So we were 2 feet above any limiting zone.
And then that little panhandle down on the left, like it really seems to drop there, the grade. When I drove up Forest, like that little.
The piece, the Forest Lane parcel?
Yeah, like it goes.
Yeah, it drops down,
Yeah.
correct.
And is there,
So we were not proposing any infiltration in that location, just because we did not do any testing there.
Right.
We've just provided rate control in that area.
Okay, and then I just heard you were going to save some trees. When I look at a satellite view of this property now, or if I'm looking at it in the summertime, it seems like it's covered 40 to 50% with trees and leaves, like if you look down at it. It itself is retaining water on the property. So the bioretention on this property is fairly high. Do you use that in your calculations?
So one of the parties asked a question about the runoff coefficients, and those runoff coefficients do take into account, the soil coverage, the existing conditions. With rainfall, once the initial abstractions are full, you get that runoff, right? And that's really what those calculations show.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Mr. Lambert.
Good evening.
Your testimony in the hearing prior, Mr. Brosman asked you about different sections of the code. You recall?
Yes.
And he asked you about section 280-91D. And his question was, continuing on from other prior, this is, I'm sorry, in, what do you call it? Exhibit A12, section, sheet 4. Continuing on to 280-91D, says there's still another requirement. And take my word for it, I'm reading from the transcript, so it's yes. Okay. And you say yes, considering, and then reading from the code, consideration shall be given to the arrangement and location of common open space to take advantage of physical characteristics of the site and to place common open space within easy access and view of dwelling units, at the same time preserving and enhancing natural features. Going a little bit further down around on the next page, 75, and Mr. Brosman asks you, and is it an easy view of the dwelling units generally speaking? And you say yes, generally speaking. So if we go to A12, specifically speaking, Unit 34 is behind Units 31 and 32. Can Unit 34 see the open space?
Yes.
How?
You would see it at an angle.
Where? How does that happen?
So, I'm sorry. So you could see the angle of the open space. So on the opposite side of Drive B, closest to Stratford, you can see open space.
So you have to be outside to see it? Or you're saying
you might have a window in the front that you can look, and there's
You might, or you do?
I would like, I am not the architect, but I would expect that Unit 34 with frontages on the, with two party walls would have numerous windows on the front and back.
But we don't see that here, even though this, you said this was basically so complete that it was almost really a final full plan set?
Typically, we wouldn't submit the full architecturals as part of that, and I would go back to, 28135C, which talks about the generalized site plan shall be submitted.
Right, so really from 34, we might probably disagree. You probably really, in my view anyway, can't see the open space. How about from 35? Unit 35, it seems to be blocked from 30 and 31.
Again, you can see it at an angle, really on either angle.
It's kind of a stretch, don't you think, Mr. Lambert?
The code section doesn't say that it's every unit has to see every square foot, right? It says,
It says, as you read, common open space within easy access and viewing of the dwelling units. That doesn't sound like a very easy.
I'm going to object. It doesn't say the dwelling units. It says
I
of
just
dwelling
read it.
units.
It says,
You added a
consideration shall
word.
be given to the arrangement and location of common open space to take advantage of physical characteristics of the site and to place common open space within easy access and viewing of the dwelling units.
It doesn't say the dwelling.
I'm reading from the transcript that you read from the code.
Fact is that Mr. Brosnan can, on redirect, clarify.
Excuse me, I'm looking at 28091. I don't mean any disrespect, but the word "the" is not
Okay.
in
It
front
does-
of
right,
dwelling.
it
That's
says
all I'm
view
pointing
of
out.
Dwelling units, view of dwelling units.
It says
Okay.
view of dwelling units. It doesn't say the dwelling units or
All right.
all of the dwelling units.
Okay. How about from unit 36?
yes, I would say the same, and I would go back to, you were just reading the code is, within easy access. So all of the units have easy access to this. It's not, a hidden or precluded area, right? It's easy. All these units have easy access to the open space.
So that's kind of a qualified answer, isn't it? So really, it's not qualified in the sense or quality answer as opposed to a quantity answer. To you, it may be easy. To me, I'd look, that's not so easy. Is that right? That's a fair statement?
I would say that this is easy access. I don't know how else to say it.
Do you say the same thing about Unit 8 with regard to it's behind Units 27, Unit 27?
Yes, that has, you can look at, various angles to the open space.
Right, so that's not considered open space, right? Where you have the arrow right now?
The code section, again, it says view of dwelling units. It doesn't say every unit must have direct unobstructed views of the open space.
I'm saying where you have the arrow right now, that's not considered the open space.
That is considered open space,
Is
yes.
that
Dark green is open space.
what is that dotted line and all that? What is that right there?
It's below the surface. You would not see it.
I'm
You'd
asking
have.
you, what is that?
It's a stormwater facility.
Okay. So, again, Unit 18.
I would answer the
Same
same
answer.
question is you have
19.
you can have views. They are not direct unobstructed views, but the code doesn't say direct unobstructed views. The code says that you shall have easy access, which I believe you all have easy access to the open space, and view of dwelling units, right? So within view of dwelling units, and you can have a view of that open space.
But you don't know if there's windows there.
As I testified to, you have a unit that has two party walls on either side. Every townhouse I've ever seen that has party walls on both sides has windows on the front and the back.
Okay, I guess we disagree about this, Mr. Lambert. There we go. Thank you. Oh, I have another question, sorry. Do you know, are there some pumps in the buildings presently on the
I do not
Litchfield
know.
property? So if there were some pumps presently in the Hamilton property, that would indicate that there may be some groundwater higher up?
Not necessarily. It could be that water was infiltrating at a higher level due to gutters or roof drains, and they put that in as a preventative measure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lambert, just to clarify, so where you have the arrow now, that is stormwater,
Yes, there is stormwater under the ground there.
but But you're saying it's open space. It's just not open space that's calculated into the formula, correct?
No, open space, it is calculated into the formula. You are permitted stormwater up to 10% of the open space.
Okay, all right. No, appreciate that clarification. Talking about the driveway, did you testify it's 28 feet in width?
That is correct.
Now, what would the difference, compare that to the single-family plan? What would the driveway be in that plan?
It would likely be the same width, 28 feet. We made it 28 feet as a response to the township engineer's comment.
So by code, what would it be required in the single-family plan?
I believe 28 feet in the single-family plan.
Okay. And in this plan, A12, page 4, the driveway is private?
It would be owned by the HOA is the intent, yes.
So during a snowfall, where is the snow removal, where is it placed?
Snow can go, I lived in a condo for many years. So there are, areas along the driveway that snow could get placed. There are areas, kind of in between units or driveways that snow could get placed. And, like the condo that I used to live in, if you get an extreme amount of snow, they actually come and remove it.
Is there curbing on this driveway?
Yes.
Okay. But the snow would not be placed, it would not, like, the snow area would not be one of the parking spots, would it?
No, that's not the intent.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I believe you testified to the square footage of the proposed townhomes. Did you say 3,000 square feet?
Correct.
Not including a basement?
Not including the basement.
But are there basements, as these are built, will there be basements?
There will likely be basements, yes.
Unfinished?
I don't know. Again, I do not know the developer's proposal, but a lot of times in these types of developments, that would be an option to finish the basement.
Would they have an egress?
They would have to meet the building codes. I'm not an architect.
But if they had an egress, that square footage would be included, so it wouldn't be 3,000 square feet, it'd be more than 3,000 square feet, correct?
Our 3,000 square feet did not include basements or garages, so if you were going to include a basement, the number may be more, yes.
Okay. And then just clarification, so on units 21 to 24, 25 to 28, and 29 to 32, the beige and the white included, is that the full property? Or is there a yard included?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I'd say in unit 21, where's the yard?
So you have a common area. When you say yard, right, these would be a townhouse. You'd have your...
So they don't have a personal space, like where they would be able to fence in?
No, they would likely not have any personal space that you'd fence in, correct.
Okay, so property 21 or unit 21 would, what we see there is all that they would have in terms of their property?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Ooh, I just hit a button. A couple of questions. You talked about the inlet at the corner of Drive A and I guess the Stratford and kind of the open space. Is it on that side?
Yes.
Okay. Where does that drain to?
So I'm going to go to... So using Exhibit A12, Sheet 5, there's an inlet out at Stratford Road on the proposed driveway. There's an additional inlet just into the property along the curb line, and that inlet, then we'll go down and we'll have, there's another inlet in front of unit 23. There's an inlet that it connects to in front of unit 17. And then it goes and it will end up connecting to stormwater basin 3.
Is that the triangular one?
I just want to verify there's lots of different pipes. Give me one
Yeah.
second.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to talk over you while you're thinking a
Yep,
little bit.
go ahead.
I was concerned about Ms. Mahoney's concerns about her property and wondered if there was any way to have an inlet at the edge of the property to the left as we look at it of Drive A, all the way down by her house.
So it's a great issue. All the way down by her house is elevation 429 or 430. Our driveway is at 434 for reference. We're about 4 feet higher there. We can, and then all the way down at what you'll refer to as the triangular basin, just because it's easier to talk about it that way. It's basin 3 in the bottom left corner of A12 sheet 5. The basin down there, the top of the grade, is 428. So we're a little bit lower, but not enough to really get enough fall from.
What did you say hers was? Like, say we were
430. So we have about
it's just 2
we have about
feet.
2 feet, which just really isn't enough fall from, point A to point 8B to have.
Except one's at the surface and one is going into the tank below the surface.
Correct, but there's water in that basin that we have to account for tailwater. And so looking at it, we did make efforts to really minimize. Hearing the concern of Ms. Mahoney early on, we really made every effort to be able to capture as much water as we could, allowing for gravity. And so, we are not obligated to put that inlet in Stratford and collect the Stratford water, but that was really an effort to address that concern and minimize it.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you just move it a few feet, it might actually.
We looked at it. It just an
Do you ever
elevation
pump
issue.
stormwater?
We have pumped stormwater. It gets very complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. All right, well, it was just an idea I had. Okay. Basements. I know you're not an architect, but how deep is your standard basement? Like if you were digging a foundation, or foundation, I guess is what I should say. I'm just wondering what's the difference between the floor of the basement and your 10-foot
Right. So
dry zone?
I'm going to have, again, not the architect,
No,
but I will talk about generalities. Typically, your finished floor will be a foot or two above grade, right? So when you walk into a house, you step up because the way they frame it, they need the framing to make sure that it doesn't rot. And so your kind of first floor, let's start off and just say it's a foot, right? We'll be conservative instead of 2 feet and say it's a foot above of grade. You probably have about a foot of structure, and say you have if you wanted a luxurious basement, you'd have a 9-foot basement, right? And so your excavation is probably going to be 9.5 feet down for that basement, depending on existing grades and how they're proposed grades, right? But in very general terms,
But you'll be within that dry 10-foot depth that you did.
yes, and we had no
generally.
signs to suggest otherwise.
Okay, that. I should have asked it that way. Sorry. You showed us a neighbor plan or neighbor plan, A4A.
Yep.
When you use that, and I don't know if you did these calculations, I can't read it. Sorry, I need better glasses to read some of those tables. What is the so I noticed there are 7 stormwater basins on this plan as opposed to the 5 that you have on sheet, or whatever you're calling sheet 4 of the A12. Any calculation on how much more that impinges on the open space, how much closer do you get to that 10% number you were talking about? Or are you above it?
So in the, let's see here, I wanted to figure out how to show it to you the best way.
I'm basically asking.
It's really
if
the
this is a
bottom.
legitimate you
Yeah,
know, plan.
and so it's the bottom,
I
hit the
just
wrong
can't-
button, sorry here. The township got a new computer here, so it's a little bit more of a challenge. And I'm trying to show both at the same time. So if you look in the upper right, so this is kind of that, everything was shaded green. And remember, this plan was trying to be responsive to neighbors' questions and concerns, and that's what really developed this.
Yeah, I
And
guess somehow I'm trying to get it, is it a viable plan, I guess?
It's close. I'm going to get to the punchline here in a second. But the area next to Unit 24, where it's showing a stormwater basin, and then I draw your attention to the bottom left. So we're not even including that in the what was counted as open space, right? So that was a stormwater basin that was within the green space that we didn't count, right? So we said, okay, that doesn't count. We then took a look at the ones behind, let me get the right unit numbers for the record, between 19 and 23, there's a stormwater basin. If you look to the bottom left, the green space, it looks a little bit funny because it's held pretty far off of those units. But the reason is we didn't have that stormwater basin underneath that green space for purposes of the calculation. The triangular portion in the bottom left-hand corner where we have a stormwater basin, again, if you look at it, we didn't include that in the dark green calculation.
No, in fact, you didn't include any of it, the other one.
And then
also
we
under the
didn't include the one adjacent to 27. We didn't include that in the basin. So the one stormwater basin that's included is the one behind units 15 through 18. And so the basin behind units 15 through 18 is included in it. But if you look at the table, and I cheat because I can blow it up over here. We had the minimum open space requirement was 25%. This plan in the green area, in the lower left of A4A, it shows that we have 29.6% is shaded, and then the stormwater management within that is about 3,000 feet or 3%. So it would actually be under your 10%. It was a long-winded answer to your question, but
I got
I
it,
wanted
but
to
I
explain.
didn't realize that now the dark green is peripheral, it's not just central.
It's not just central, right? And so we were showing it, and that was
I got it.
one of the questions for the neighbors of why you don't propose this plan is the code says that it should all be central unless approved by the board.
Got it. I didn't understand that. It makes sense now.
Contiguous, yes.
It is contiguous, but it's not central.
Well, there are two portions of it. If you would consider the driveway.
I see, you count that as a barrier.
Yeah, so if you counted that as breaking up it being contiguous, it wouldn't count. If you would allow it to cross that and be considered contiguous, then we could look at it that way.
All right, thank you. That was very helpful for me. I didn't appreciate that was all dark green. All right, I'm on my last question. Tell me the difference between a road and a driveway. I know you answered some of this at planning, I just don't remember.
It's really, I wasn't at the planning meeting, but
Or somebody
yeah.
answered it.
It's really based on your ordinance. So your ordinance has a specific requirement for, let me get the right word of how they describe it. It's 25540. So it's, an attached dwelling residential development, and it has certain standards for that. And we're meeting those standards, providing the driveway access to all these units. And it's consistent with how the township's interpreted this for other attached dwelling residential developments.
Can you name any?
Villa
just
Stratford,
for my own.
Villa Stratford, for instance, which is right down the street, right? So it's on Stratford, right? And so everything internal there is a driveway accessing those units, and so that's kind of consistent with the way the township's looked at it.
You're looking at A6.
I'm sorry. Yes, A6 identifies, again. It says Madison Lane, but it says former Villa Stratford, but
Got it.
known as Villa Stratford.
Are there any benefits to being a driveway over being a road? Or are there benefits of being a road over being a driveway that you know of?
It's, for practical purposes, this is a planned community. It's going to maintain and operate it. There won't be any necessary, an easement for the driveway because it's part of what it would be like a common element within the planned community. So from a kind of a use and ownership perspective, it is used by the planned community. And so it's, if you were creating a public street where the owners were not a cooperative arrangement, that's really when you get into the street, right, is you needed a right-of-way so one neighbor could access the road or the street and over another neighbor, and then you sometimes have the municipality that's maintaining that street. This is really just a planned community having a driveway that accesses the units.
Understood. Thank you. Last question, actually. You talked about nothing on the roof as far as living space. And I know you're not the architect, and I know this is a land use issue, but I just want to put it out there as far as green roofing, solar energy. There's a lot of roof space up there to be used for good things. So I guess that wasn't a question. So. I'm sorry. That's it for me.
The benefit of going last is that my colleagues all took my questions, so nothing from me tonight. Thank you.
So let's, guess we go off the record and see if we have a date beyond March 7th. If we can, we don't have to pick it tonight. We could talk about it on March 7th. Why don't we figure that out between now and March 7th, when the meeting room's available?
You don't want to do it now? She did it.
Okay, yeah, if you
Yeah,
have that.
I have some dates if you
Okay,
want. Mhm.
let's do that.
Okay. Right now, the room is open on March 12th, 20th, and 26th.
Is the 26th right before a holiday?
The 26th is a Tuesday.
Right. Are schools off that week?
They are.
I don't
Okay,
know.
yeah, I'm out of town.
I think the 12th is the Comprehensive Planning Steering Committee, some commissioners. Yeah, it's not about the room, it's just about the commissioners. So what was the other one, 12, and then 20?
The 20th.
I'm
right.
good on 20.
I'm good on 20.
Council?
March 20th?
20?
I'm good on the 20th, Commissioner.
Excellent.
Are we good on the 20th?
I mean, we have the 7th, you're not available 7, right? So
We were,
I might be able to juggle the 20th.
Okay.
we were available on the 12th, but that's out, you said. For
We
the,
have another meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a conflict, a couple of commissioners.
How about the 26th?
the 20th, though, could we do tentative?
Can we do tentative on the 20? See if you can work your schedule? And then I heard you're out on the 26th, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's,
I'm
is
out.
that a spring holiday?
Well, I'm out, but some of the parties may be out as well if it's spring break for Radnor.
That's what I'm asking. I didn't, if those are the dates.
It's also spring break for Springfield, Montgomery County.
Okay.
I'm going to be out of
Yeah,
the state.
I'm sure it is. It's, so let's do tentative on 20.
20th?
So definitely on the 7th,
Juggle away.
and tentative on the 20 that we can confirm on the 7th.
Okay. The 20th is tentative. We'll be back here on the 7th and confirm that, I guess, on the 7th. Yeah, let's just go on the record so we have the dates and everybody is in agreement. So after discussion off the record, the next hearing, tonight's hearing will be continued to March 7th. And after that. We have a tentative date of March 20th for the hearing after that. And is there any issues from any of the parties regarding mandatory time periods? Mr. Brosman, you're okay with the time periods?
Yes, we're okay with the
For
time
holding
periods.
hearings and, okay, in a prompt fashion? Because this has been pretty prompt, is my experience.
Very prompt.
I have no objection to the dates we've been doing.
Okay. So,
And on March 7th, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, an estimate from those of you who know better than I do. How many more nights do you think we need 2.5 hours a night? Is 2 going to be enough?
no,
I mean, we can hit that, but probably not, right? Okay.
absolutely not.
We'll work on that on the 7th and the 20th, I guess.
So on March 7th, who can we expect to hear from? What areas?
I think, Mr. Brosman, on the 7th, you will have your planner available?
Yeah, Mr. Lambert's not available, so our other options are planner, landscape architect, and traffic.
Okay,
I'm not sure which order we would go,
okay.
but I know those are my other three possibilities, because Mr.
Okay.
Lambert can't make it then.
Okay. All right, well, let's see how far we get that night, and everybody be prepared with your questions for traffic or landscape architect. Anything else from any of the parties at this point? Yes?
You had mentioned earlier at the beginning of the night that there was notification that it was going to be, sorry?
You've got to come up, please.
No problem. You had mentioned earlier that there was notification that there was going to be a change and that we would be hearing from Mr. Lambert tonight. Is that some information that the parties are able to receive, or is that just information that goes to the commissioners?
Well, it's been going to the attorneys, so.
Right.
You know, if there's a change in the witness, is that what you're asking?
That is what I, that is
Yeah,
what I'm asking.
I think I sent one email out to Mr. Shuda about that, because I know he's in touch with most of the residents. But if we're going to have changes in witnesses, I mean, I guess the easiest way to make sure everybody knows about it is, between Peggy and I, we have a master list of email addresses that we can notify?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be
It's
great.
going to change again.
Sure, yeah.
We'll let you know. But right now, Mr. Lambert's, looks like he's okay for the 20th, and a planner and/or traffic engineer would be here on March 7th.
Great, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
motion to adjourn?
Can I have a motion to adjourn? And a second. We're adjourned. All are in favor.
Yeah, that's all I needed. I just needed, you know, I needed to tell the court, I even got Sean Marty to send me.
He's dropping his car off.
I got a phone call